Hello everyone and welcome to Lucid Mind. This is Majid and in today's video I brought you another multiple choice paper from Cambridge O-Level Chemistry. Today I'll be solving paper 1 variant 2 from May-June 2020. If you need to go to any specific question, just follow the link given in the video description. So without wasting any time, let's just begin the paper. Question number 1. The diagram shows 4 pieces of apparatus that are used to measure the volume of a gas or liquid. Which piece of apparatus should always be filled to the same level? So we have to find the one that is always to be filled to the same particular level. There are 4 options given. A is burette, B is gas syringe, C is measuring cylinder and D is pipette. As we can see in A, B and C, a lot of divisions are given. So we can use a particular volume or any volume of our need. But in D you can see that there is only one division that is given, so it means that the volume in D is fixed. So therefore, in order to take the volume in pipette, it should always be filled to this level. A pipette could be of 20 cm3 or of 25 cm3, but you cannot take the volume less than this. So therefore answer is D.
Question 2. Aqueous sodium thiosulfate reacts with acid to make a precipitate of sulfur. You can see sulfur is formed in the product. A student investigates the effect of temperature on the rate of this reaction. The student places a piece of paper with a cross on it below the reaction mixture as shown in the diagram, measures the time taken for the cross to no longer be seen, repeats the reaction at different temperatures. This is the given diagram. We can see this is the paper and this is the cross. 50 cm3 of sodium thiosulfate is added along with the acid. Which apparatus is needed for this investigation? A. Balance. Balance is not needed as we are not doing any weighing. Pipette. Now pipette can be used only for 20 cm3 or 25 cm3 fixed volume, but the volume given here is 50 cm3, so therefore pipette cannot be used. Third is stop clock. Stop clock can be used for measuring time taken. B. Again balance, not needed. Stop clock. Thermometer. Thermometer can also be used to measure the temperature. C. We have burette. Burette can be used to take 50 cm3 of volume. We have gas syringe. Gas syringe is not needed. We have thermometer. It can be used to measure the temperature. In D we have measuring cylinder. We can take 50 cm3 volume. By stop clock we can measure time, and by thermometer we can measure temperature. So the correct option seems to be D.
Question 3. A paper chromatography experiment is carried out to find an RF value of iron plus 3. The result is shown. This is the experimental diagram. To make the spot containing iron plus 3 more visible, the paper is sprayed with aqueous sodium hydroxide so that the precipitate of iron 3 hydroxide forms. Under the conditions of the experiment, the RF of iron plus 3 is given by dash and the color of the precipitate is dash. So we have to find the RF value. RF is actually the retention factor and it is equal to the distance traveled by the spot. This is the spot and the distance should be taken from the starting line. So it is distance traveled by a spot divided by the distance traveled by the solvent. As in the diagram they have measured the distance traveled by the spot is x and the distance traveled by the solvent is given by y. So RF will be equal to x divided by y. Now second part is the color of the precipitate. So as we know that the precipitate formed is iron 3 hydroxide. So iron in plus 3 form is always reddish brown in color. So therefore gap 1 is x divided by y and gap 2 is the reddish brown color. So therefore answer is A.
Question 4. The diagram shows 2 experiments. In experiment 1 they have taken aluminum ion. there is no precipitate, it means it is the solution of aluminum. Then they added a few drops of sodium hydroxide and a precipitate is formed. Then they added an excess of sodium hydroxide and we have to find out the observation. In experiment 2, they have taken the solution of copper ions and then they again added a few drops of sodium hydroxide and a precipitate is formed. When added excess of sodium hydroxide, what happens? So we have to find out the results. As we know that when aqueous sodium hydroxide is added to aluminum, a white precipitate of aluminum hydroxide is formed and it is white in color. But when excess of sodium hydroxide is added, this white precipitate actually dissolves to make a colorless solution. So we have colorless solution of aluminum hydroxide. In experiment 2, when copper is added to sodium hydroxide, what happens that a precipitate of copper hydroxide is formed and it is pale blue in color. When sodium hydroxide is added in excess, this remains insoluble, so there is blue precipitate. So we can see that in experiment 1 precipitate dissolves and in experiment 2 precipitate remains. So let's just find out the answer. In experiment 1 the precipitate dissolves, so it should be C or D. But in experiment 2 the precipitate remains, so the answer is C. Question 5. Which method of separation requires a change of state from liquid to gas? 1 is paper chromatography. In chromatography we do not require gas to be tested, so this is wrong. 2 is crystallization. In crystallization the excess solvent must be evaporated in order to make crystals, so this is correct. 3. Distillation. Now distillation process is again based on the boiling point separation, so we have to convert liquid into gas, this is correct. 4 is filtration. In filtration we just need to filter insoluble substances, so this is wrong. So only option 2 and 3 are correct, it means the answer is C. Question 6. Hydrogen sulfide and hydrogen chloride are both gases at temperatures above -50 degrees centigrade. Which gas will diffuse most rapidly at the temperature given? Now diffusion of gases depend on two things. First is the molecular mass of gas and second is the temperature. Higher the molecular mass, slower will be the diffusion, or lower the molecular mass, faster will be the diffusion. And temperature is directly proportional to the diffusion, so if there is higher temperature there should be higher kinetic energy and more rate of diffusion. The first one is hydrogen sulfide and there are 2 hydrogen atoms, so finding the molecular mass we have 2 plus the molecular mass of sulfur is 32, so it becomes 34. For HCl we have 1 for hydrogen and 35.5 for chlorine, so the molecular mass of HCl becomes 36.5. As we can see, hydrogen sulfide has lower molecular mass, so it will diffuse faster. So option C or option D could be correct. Now let's find out which temperature is higher. So -20 degrees centigrade is higher as compared to -40 degrees centigrade. So therefore answer is D. Question 7. The diagram shows the relative mass and the relative charge of two particles present in atoms and ions. On y-axis we have relative mass and on x-axis we have relative charge. Which of these particles are present in hydrogen atom and a hydrogen ion? In hydrogen atom we have 1 proton and 1 electron, so therefore the charge is 0 while the mass is 1. In H plus ion the number of proton is 1 while the number of electron is 0, so therefore the charge on H plus is +1. Now this particle has a relative atomic mass of 2000, it means it is not present in either hydrogen atom or hydrogen ion. And this particle has a mass of 1 and charge of -1, so it could be present in the neutral hydrogen, but it is not present in hydrogen ion. Now looking at the options, we have this particle present in hydrogen atom, but this particle is absent. Again, this particle is neither present in H+ nor this particle is present. So therefore the option is C.
Question 8. Which ion has the most shells that contain electrons? So we have to find the number of shells. In order to find the number of electrons, we first must know about the atomic number. So the atomic number of aluminum is 13. Atomic number of beryllium is 4. Nitrogen is 7. Sulfur is 16. As the charge on aluminum is +3, so it means there are 3 electrons lost. So therefore number of electron is 13 minus 3, 10. And in first shell we will have 2 electrons, and in second shell we will have 8 electrons. So therefore there are 2 shells for aluminum +3 ion. The atomic number of beryllium is 4, so in order to find the number of electrons we have 4 minus 2, because the charge is +2, so only 2 electrons are left, so we'll have just one shell containing 2 electrons. The atomic number of nitrogen is 7 and there is -3 charge, so the number of electrons will be 7 and 3 becomes 10. So there will be 2 shells. In first shell we will have 2 electrons and second shell we will have 8 electrons. In sulfur, the atomic number is 16 and the charge is -2, so the number of electrons will be 16 and 2, 18. And there will be 3 shells. In the first shell we will have 2 electrons, in the second shell we will have 8 electrons, in the third shell we will have 8 electrons. So therefore answer is D. Question 9. Which substance conducts electricity both when solid and when molten? A. An alloy. As alloy is made up of metals, so therefore metals are good conductors in solid form and also good conductors in molten form. As there are free electrons in metals, so they can easily conduct current. B is a hydrocarbon. Hydrocarbon is both bad conductor in solid form and in molten form. C is a metal oxide. Metal oxide is also a bad conductor because in metal oxide ionic bond is present and metal has lost its electrons to the oxygen atom. So therefore this is also incorrect. D is a salt. A salt is made up of positive and negative ions. So therefore salt is bad conductor in solid state, but it is a good conductor in molten form. So therefore option A is correct.
Question 10. When they react together, which pair of elements form an ionic compound? Now ionic compound is made up of metals and non-metals by complete transfer of electron from metal towards non-metal. And we can find metal and non-metal by looking in the periodic table. So group 1 and group 2 are purely metals, while group 6 and 7 is of non-metals. So looking at the option, A is carbon and hydrogen, both are non-metals, so therefore covalent bond is present. B is hydrogen and chlorine, both are non-metals. C is lithium, lithium is from group 1 and oxygen is from group 6, so they can make an ionic compound. D is sulfur and oxygen, both are non-metal, so therefore the only correct option is C. Question 11. How many shared electrons are in one carbon dioxide molecule? So we have to find the number of shared electrons. Let's draw the structure of carbon dioxide. We have 1 carbon and 2 oxygen atoms. Carbon is in 4th group of the periodic table, so it has 4 electrons in the outermost shell, while oxygen is in group 6 of the periodic table, so it has 6 electrons. 2 electrons are bonded with the carbon atom and other 4 electrons are present in the form of lone pair. Now we can see that these electrons are shared between carbon and oxygen atoms. So there are 8 electrons shared between them, so therefore answer is C.
Question 12. Element X has a lattice of positive ions and C of electrons. We can see the structure. Which property will X have? As in this structure we can see there are positive ions and negative C of electrons, so therefore it is from metal. Now we can find the properties of metal. A. It conducts electricity by the movement of ions and electrons. Now metals only conduct by the movement of electrons, not by ions, so therefore this is incorrect. B. It has a high melting point. As we can see, there are a lot of positive charges and negative electrons, so therefore there are very strong forces of attraction between the positive and negative charges. So therefore it has high melting point. This is correct. C. It is decomposed by an electric current. Now metal is not decomposed by an electric current, it actually can conduct electric current. D says it is not malleable. Malleable means it can be converted into sheets. So metals are malleable, so therefore this is also incorrect. So the only correct option is B, high melting point.
Question 13. Which row shows the correct state symbol for the reaction between calcium carbonate and dilute HCl? The conditions are room temperature and pressure. So we have to find the state of these compounds at room temperature and pressure. Calcium carbonate is solid at room temperature. HCl is in the form of aqueous solution. Calcium chloride is a soluble salt, so therefore it is also in aqueous form. H2O is in liquid form, not in aqueous form, so therefore liquid should be correct. And carbon dioxide is a gas at room temperature and pressure, so all are correct for carbon dioxide. So option D seems to be correct because calcium carbonate is solid, HCl is aqueous, calcium chloride is aqueous, H2O is liquid, and carbon dioxide is gas. Answer is D. Question 14. The expression shown for the value of atomic mass for fluorine is incomplete. This is the formula of atomic mass. How should the gaps in the expression be correctly completed? As we know that for atomic mass, we have to take the average mass of one atom of that element divided by 1/12 of the mass of carbon 12. So gap 1 should be atom and gap 2 should be 1/12. So therefore correct option is B. Question 15. A mixture of 5 cm³ of CH4 and 100 cm³ of air is exploded. Assume air is 80% nitrogen by volume and 20% oxygen. The resulting mixture is cooled. All volumes are measured at room temperature and pressure. What is the composition of the resulting gas? As they have given that air consists of 80% nitrogen by volume and 20% oxygen, so in 100 cm³ of air there should be 20 cm³ of oxygen present. Let's write the balanced equation and find out which gas is left. So we have CH4, methane. It reacts with oxygen gas to form carbon dioxide gas and water molecules. According to balanced equation, we have 1 mole of CH4, it reacts with 2 moles of oxygen and forms 1 mole of carbon dioxide. As water is in liquid form at room temperature and pressure, so we are not going to take the volume of H2O. The volume of CH4 given in the question is 5 cm³, while the volume of oxygen given in the question is 20 cm³. These are the initial volumes before the reaction starts. So after the reaction, what happens that according to this ratio 1:2, 5 cm³ of CH4 will require 10 cm³ of oxygen. So after the reaction is complete, CH4 is consumed and 10 cm³ of oxygen is also consumed. So 10 cm³ of oxygen is left. As equimolar ratio of CH4 and carbon dioxide is given, it is 1:1. So what happens that 5 cm³ of CH4 will convert into 5 cm³ of carbon dioxide. So after the reaction we have 5 cm³ of CO2 and CH4 is completely burned out. So after the reaction is complete, CH4 is completely consumed, we have 10 cm³ of oxygen left and 5 cm³ of carbon dioxide formed. As nitrogen does not react in the chemical reaction, so therefore 80 cm³ of nitrogen is also present after the chemical reaction. So in resulting gas we have 5 cm³ of carbon dioxide, we have 10 cm³ of oxygen, we have 80 centimeter cube of nitrogen because it is unreacted, and water is in liquid form, so therefore there is no volume of water. So therefore correct option is B.
Question 16. Which arrangement is used to electroplate copper onto a steel key? Now for electroplating there are few points that you must remember. First one is that anode always dissolves. Second point is that the solution must be similar to that of anode. For example, if anode is made up of copper, then the solution must be of soluble copper ions, such as copper sulfate. Third option is that the substance that needs to be electroplated, for example this key, this must be made as cathode. So we have copper as anode and key as cathode. So let's move towards the options. The electrolyte must be of copper, so it is aqueous copper to sulfate, this is correct. Anode must be made up of pure copper, so it is correct. And cathode must be of the steel key, so it is also correct. So therefore option is A.
Question 17. The chloride of metal X is dissolved in water. So we have the chloride. A concentrated solution of this chloride is electrolyzed using inert electrodes. X is above sodium in the reactivity series, so it means X is more reactive than sodium. In addition to chlorine, which gas is liberated at which electrode? Now, according to the reactivity series, we have potassium, then sodium, then calcium. As X is above sodium, so it means X could be potassium. So the chloride of metal X would be potassium chloride, and concentrated solution of potassium chloride is electrolyzed. So when we have a concentrated solution of potassium chloride, it will form potassium ions, chloride ions, and also in water there are H plus ions and OH negative ions present. As H plus ions is below in the reactivity series, so therefore H plus ions will be discharged before potassium ions. So H plus discharges to form hydrogen gas. H plus will gain electron and form H2. While on the negative side we have chloride ions and hydroxide ions. Now as this solution is a concentrated solution, so we have very high amount of chloride ions. So therefore chlorine gas is formed instead of oxygen. As chlorine is already mentioned in the question, so therefore the other gas that is formed is hydrogen. Now hydrogen is a positive ion, so positive ion is cation and cation moves towards the cathode. So therefore hydrogen is formed at the cathode. So correct option is hydrogen gas at cathode, and therefore answer is B. Question 18. Which change in conditions for the reaction between zinc and dilute sulfuric acid increases the rate of reaction by lowering the activation energy? A. Adding a catalyst. It is correct because catalyst always lowers the activation energy and therefore increases the rate of reaction. B is increasing the concentration of the acid. It can increase the rate of reaction but it does not decrease the activation energy. C is increasing the surface area of zinc. Again, it can increase the rate of reaction but not decreases the activation energy. D is increasing the temperature. Again, temperature can increase the rate but it does not lower the activation energy. So therefore correct option is catalyst. Question 19. Many reactions can be classified as redox reactions. Which equations show redox reaction? Redox reaction means such a reaction in which reduction and oxidation both take place at the same time. Now let's find out the oxidation states of these elements, then we can know whether the substance is oxidized or reduced. 1. Magnesium. As magnesium is in element state, so therefore oxidation state is 0. In HCl, Cl has -1 charge as it belongs to 7th group, so therefore +1 is for hydrogen atom. In MgCl2 there are 2 chlorine atoms, so total charge on chlorine is -2 while on magnesium it is +2. Hydrogen gas is neutral The oxidation state of hydrogen molecule is also 0. Now we can see that magnesium has moved from 0 to +2 and hydrogen has moved from +1 to 0. So therefore magnesium atom has oxidized while hydrogen is reduced. So this is an example of redox reaction. 2. FeCl2. As there are 2 chlorine atoms, so the total charge will be -2. For iron it should be +2. Chlorine is in diatomic state, so in molecular state the charge is 0. In FeCl3 there are 3 chlorine atoms, so the overall charge is -3 and iron should be +3. Now in this reaction, iron has moved from +2 to +3 oxidation state. It means iron has oxidized, while chlorine moves from 0 to -1. So therefore chlorine is reduced. So this is also an example of redox reaction. For third option we have sodium, as sodium is element, so therefore the charge is 0. For bromine molecule the charge is 0 again. For NaBr we have +1 charge on sodium and -1 for bromine. So therefore sodium has oxidized. Sodium goes from 0 to +1 while bromine goes from 0 to -1. As both oxidation and reduction take place, so therefore this is also an example of redox reaction. So therefore correct option is A. Question 20. Which row correctly shows whether the hydrogen ion concentration and the pH of ethanoic acid are higher or lower than those of hydrochloric acid of the same concentration? As the concentration is same, so we have HCl and ethanoic acid CH3COOH. HCl is a strong acid, so it will be converted into H+ ions and Cl- ions, while ethanoic acid is a weak acid, so only it will partially change into ethanoate ion and H+ ions. So therefore HCl will produce higher concentration of H+ ions. So therefore H+ ion concentration will be lower in ethanoic acid. Now H+ concentration is inversely proportional to pH. So lower the H+ concentration, higher will be the pH. So in ethanoic acid, the hydrogen ion concentration will be lower and pH will be higher. So option C is correct. Question 21. Which aqueous reagent liberates ammonia from ammonium nitrate on warming? For solving this type of question, you should remember one equation, which is that any ammonium salt, it could be ammonium nitrate or any other salt, when it reacts with alkali, on warming it liberates ammonia gas. Now for ammonium salt we have ammonium nitrate, and then the second reactant must be an alkali. A is calcium nitrate, so it is a salt. This is incorrect. B is potassium hydroxide, it is an alkali. C is sodium chloride, again it is a salt, so incorrect. D is sulfuric acid, so acid is not needed. So the correct option is B. Question 22. Two fertilizers are made by mixing chemical compounds. Fertilizer X contains 500 grams of ammonium nitrate and 500 grams of ammonium sulfate per kg. Fertilizer Y contains 700 grams of ammonium nitrate and 300 grams of calcium sulfate per kg. Which fertilizer contains the higher percentage of nitrogen by mass and which contains the higher percentage of sulfur by mass? The respective molecular masses are given. It is 80 for ammonium nitrate, 132 for ammonium sulfate and 136 for calcium sulfate. Now for finding the mass of nitrogen, we can use this formula. Mass of nitrogen in a compound will be equal to the atomic mass of nitrogen in that compound divided by MR of that compound multiplied by the given mass of compound. Now in fertilizer X, we have ammonium nitrate and ammonium sulfate. Using the formula for mass, we can write mass of nitrogen is equal to, there are 2 nitrogen atoms, so the molecular mass of nitrogen will be 28 divided by molecular mass of ammonium nitrate, it is given 80, multiply by the mass of compound. Now the mass of compound is 500 grams. Similarly, for ammonium sulfate, there are 2 nitrogen atoms, so we can write 28 divided by the molecular mass of ammonium sulfate, which is 132, multiply by the given mass 500 grams. So it comes equal to 175 grams in ammonium nitrate and 106 grams in ammonium sulfate. So the total mass of nitrogen present in fertilizer X is 175 plus 106, and it comes equal to 281 grams. So X contains 281 grams of nitrogen. Second is fertilizer Y. We can do the same calculations for fertilizer Y. We have ammonium nitrate and calcium sulfate. So the mass of nitrogen will be, as there are 2 nitrogen atoms, so we have 28 divided by the molecular mass, which is 80, into given mass, which is 700. In calcium sulfate, there is no nitrogen atom, so we cannot find the mass of nitrogen. So the mass of nitrogen comes equal to 245 grams. So in Y, we have 245 grams of nitrogen. Now finding the mass of sulfur in fertilizer X, we have ammonium nitrate. There is no sulfur present, while ammonium sulfate, the mass of sulfur will be, as there is 1 atom of sulfur, so the atomic mass of sulfur is 32 divided by the molecular mass is 132, multiplied by given mass is 500 grams. So the mass of sulfur is equal to 121 grams. So X contains 121 grams of sulfur. Now finding the mass of sulfur in fertilizer Y, we have 700 grams of ammonium nitrate, as ammonium nitrate does not consist of any sulfur, and 300 grams of calcium sulfate. So the mass of sulfur will be, as there is 1 sulfur, so the atomic mass is 32 divided by the atomic mass of calcium sulfate, which is 136, into the given mass of the compound, which is 300 grams. So the mass of sulfur comes equal to 70.5 grams in calcium sulfate. So in fertilizer Y, we have 70.5 grams of sulfur present. As the total mass of fertilizer X is 500 plus 500, 1 kilograms, and also the fertilizer Y is 700 plus 300, 1 kilogram. So we can see that the mass of nitrogen is higher in X, and mass of sulfur is also higher in X. So therefore, fertilizer with higher percentage of nitrogen is X, while the fertilizer with higher percentage of sulfur is also X. So answer is A. Question 23. Which processes occur in the manufacture of sulfuric acid? The steps involved in the formation of sulfuric acid are: in the first step, we have to burn sulfur in the presence of oxygen to form sulfur dioxide. In the second step, sulfur dioxide further oxidizes in the presence of oxygen to form sulfur trioxide. In the third step, sulfur trioxide is then dissolved in sulfuric acid to form oleum. And then in the last step, oleum is then diluted in the presence of water to form sulfuric acid. Let's see the options. 1 is burning sulfur in air. Yes, this is correct. Second is dissolving sulfur dioxide in sulfuric acid. No. Sulfur trioxide is dissolved in sulfuric acid. 3 is dissolving sulfur dioxide in water. This is also wrong. 4 is reacting sulfur dioxide with air. Yes, sulfur dioxide oxidizes in air to form sulfur trioxide. So this is correct. So option 1 and 4 are correct. Therefore answer is C.
Question 24. A lump of element X can be cut by a knife. During its reaction with water, X floats and it melts. Now we know that alkali metals have some properties like this. So we have lithium, sodium and potassium. They are less dense than water and therefore they float on the surface of water. And also they are very highly reactive, so the reaction is highly exothermic, so therefore they melt upon reaction. Now among these three, potassium is the softest metal, so it could be easily cut by the knife. Now moving towards the option, we have calcium, copper, magnesium and potassium. So the answer is D.
Question 25. Chlorine is passed into separate samples of aqueous potassium iodide and aqueous potassium bromide. In which solutions is there a color change? Now we have chlorine, bromine and iodine. As we know, down in the group the reactivity of element decreases, so therefore chlorine can displace bromine and bromine can displace iodine. Now let's find out the chemical reaction of chlorine with potassium iodide first. So we have potassium chloride and iodine will be eliminated. So chlorine is pale green in color while iodine is purple black. So therefore there is a change in color, so it could be A or B. Let's find out the second chemical reaction. We have chlorine in potassium bromide. So it will form potassium chloride along with bromine gas. Again chlorine is pale green and bromine is reddish brown. So a color change is also seen in the second reaction. So A is the correct option.
Question 26. Which diagram shows the structure of an alloy? Alloy is actually a mixture of metals, so we have different metals present. So the size of the atoms must be different. A shows two different types of elements being combined together, so it could be A. B shows the structure of graphite, so it is not an alloy, this is a pure substance, so it is not B. C shows the structure of an ionic compound, so C is also incorrect. And D shows the structure of a pure element which is made up of one type of atoms, as the size of the atoms are similar. So the only correct option is A. Question 27. Which element can only be extracted from its ore using electrolysis? Now electrolysis is used for those metals that are highly reactive and whose oxygen cannot be reduced by carbon alone. In the reactivity series we have potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminum, and they are all more reactive than carbon. So therefore carbon cannot reduce the oxides of these elements, so therefore electrolysis is needed. So it could be calcium. Copper is below from carbon, so therefore copper can be reduced by carbon. Lead can also be reduced by carbon, silver by carbon too. So the only correct option is A. Question 28. The equations show reactions taking place in blast furnace. In which reaction is an acidic impurity present in an iron ore removed? A. Carbon plus oxygen carbon dioxide. Now this carbon is provided in the form of coke, so therefore it is not the impurity present. Again this coke reacts with carbon dioxide to form carbon monoxide, so therefore it is not the impurity. In C we have iron oxide plus carbon monoxide, so therefore this reaction takes place further. This is the third step of this chemical reaction. It reacts to form iron and carbon dioxide. Again there is no impurity. In D we have calcium carbonate that reacts with silicon dioxide to form calcium silicate plus carbon dioxide. Now in this reaction this is silicon dioxide and it is present as an impurity in
iron ore. And this impurity is removed in the form of calcium silicate, that is also called the slag. So therefore correct option is D. Question 29. Which diagram correctly shows the conditions necessary for the rusting of iron and also the metal that can be used to prevent rusting by sacrificial protection? Now there are two parts of this reaction. In the first part they have asked about the rusting of iron. So we know that for rusting two things are must. One is H2O and second is oxygen. Second part of the question says about sacrificial protection. So we know that any element that is more reactive than iron could be used for sacrificial protection. Now what happens in sacrificial protection is that the more reactive metal actually reacts in the place of iron. So therefore iron is not rusted until the other metal is sacrificed completely. Now in the reactivity series we have calcium, magnesium, aluminium, zinc and then iron. As these are more reactive than iron, so they could be used for sacrificial protection. Now moving towards option A says oxygen only. So for rusting we need water as well, so this is incorrect. B says oxygen only, this is also incorrect. C says oxygen and water vapors, so this is correct. But the sacrificial protection cannot be done by copper because copper is less reactive than iron. In part D we have oxygen and water for rusting, and magnesium metal can be used for sacrificial protection as it is more reactive than iron. So correct option is D. Question 30. Aluminum is produced by the electrolysis of pure aluminum oxide. One of the electrodes in the process has to be replaced often. Which statement is correct? In aluminum oxide we have aluminum ion, which is cation, and oxide ion, which is anion. So cation moves towards the cathode, and what happens that aluminum ion gains 3 electrons and forms aluminum metal. While at anode oxygen loses 2 electrons and converts into oxygen gas. Now as the anode is made up of graphite, so therefore oxygen will react with graphite anode at high temperature to form carbon dioxide. So therefore anode needs to be replaced often. So therefore option A is correct, as the product at anode, which is oxygen, reacts with anode, which is graphite. Question 31. Which row correctly compares carbon dioxide and methane? Now the formula of carbon dioxide is CO2 and for methane we have CH4. A. Both contain carbon, so it is correct because carbon is present in carbon dioxide and it is also present in methane. So it could be A or B. Both are described as a greenhouse gas. Yes, this is also correct because carbon dioxide and CH4 both have the property to absorb the radiations and therefore increase the temperature of the earth. So this is wrong, this is correct. Both lower the pH of water when they dissolve in it. No, this is incorrect because CH4 is insoluble in water while carbon dioxide is soluble. So all three options are correct. So therefore answer is B. Question 32. Seawater has to be purified in order to obtain drinking water from it. Which processes are used to purify the seawater? Now in seawater we have water and dissolved salts. So therefore fractional distillation is not the option, because for fractional distillation we need 2 or more than 2 liquids to be separated. So therefore it should be C or D. While desalination means the removal of salt material from the liquid. So it should be C. Question 33. Which structure represents an isomer of butane? The general formula of alkane is CnH2n+2. So in butane there are 4 carbon atoms, therefore there must be 10 hydrogen atoms. And the normal structure of butane is like this. We have 4 carbon atoms, CH3, CH2, CH2, CH3. Now we have to find the isomer of this structure, and isomer is actually the compound having the same molecular formula but different structure. First one is A. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 carbon atom in the long chain, so therefore this is similar to this compound. So therefore it is not the isomer. In B we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbon atoms are in the long chain, so therefore B is wrong. In C we have 1, 2, 3 carbon atom in the long chain and 1 carbon atom as a substituent. So it could be the possible option. In D we have 4 carbon atoms in the cyclic form. So A and B are incorrect, while in C the molecular formula is C4H10. In D the molecular formula is C4 and there are 8 number of hydrogen atoms. In isomer the formula must be same, so therefore the option is C. Question 34. Which statement about the organic compounds CH4, C2H4, C2H6 and C3H8 is correct? Now the general formula for alkanes is CnH2n plus 2, while the general formula for alkene is CnH2n. Now according to these formulas, CH4 is alkane, C2H4 is alkene, C2H6 is alkane, and C3H8 is also alkane. Option A, only C2H4 and C2H6 decolorize bromine water. Now bromine water can decolorize only alkenes. It cannot decolorize alkane, so therefore it can decolorize C2H4 but not C2H6. B says they are all saturated compounds, as alkene has a double bond in it, so therefore this is unsaturated, so this is wrong. They are all unsaturated compounds. No, this is also wrong because we have alkane which is saturated and alkene which is unsaturated. D, they are all hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons are compounds containing a carbon and hydrogen, so therefore this is correct for all of these. So option D is correct, so therefore D is the answer. Question 35. The alkenes are a homologous series. Which statement about alkenes is correct? A. An alkene molecule contains 4 fewer hydrogen atoms than an alkane molecule with the same number of carbon atoms. Now according to the general formula, alkane is CnH2n plus 2, while alkene is CnH2n. So we can see that there are 2 less hydrogen atoms in alkene as compared to alkane. So this is wrong. B. If a food is described as polyunsaturated, it means that it contains polymers. Now this is wrong because polyunsaturated means many double bonds. Unsaturation is the term used for carbon-carbon double bonds. C. Propene reacts with steam to form propanol. We can write the chemical equation for this. This is propene, and propene reacts with steam. Steam consists of hydrogen and hydroxide. Therefore 1H combines with one carbon atom and OH combines with another carbon atom. So it becomes CH3, CH2, CH2OH. In this product there are 3 carbon atoms and one OH group is attached, so therefore it is propanol. So therefore C is correct. D. The general formula for alkene is CnH2n plus 2. This is wrong because this is the general formula for alkanes. So the correct option is C. Question 36. Which organic compound is used as a solvent, a renewable fuel, and in the production of vinegar? Part A. Ethanoic acid. As ethanoic acid is a carboxylic acid, it can be used as a solvent. It is not a renewable fuel and it can be used in the production of vinegar. B is ethanol. Ethanol can be used as a solvent, it can be used as a renewable fuel, and also it can be oxidized to ethanoic acid to form vinegar. C is propanoic acid. It can be used as a solvent, not as a fuel, and not in the formation of vinegar. D is propanol. Propanol is an alcohol. It can be used as a solvent and as a fuel, but not in the formation of vinegar. So the correct option is B. Question 37. Which structure shows the carboxylic acid with the lowest relative molecular mass? The functional group of carboxylic acid is RC double bond O OH. So if COOH is present, it means it is carboxylic acid. Now let's see, in A we have C double bond O OH. This is carboxylic acid. In B we have C double bond O OH. This is also carboxylic acid. In C we have carbonyl carbon and hydrogen, so this is not carboxylic acid. In D we have OH group attached, so this is also not carboxylic acid, it is alcohol. So C and D are incorrect. Let's find the molecular formula of A and B. In A we have 1 carbon atom, 2 hydrogen atoms, 2 oxygen atoms. In B we have 2 carbon atoms, 2 oxygen atoms and 4 hydrogen atoms. As in B we have higher number of carbon atoms and hydrogen atoms, so therefore the molecular mass of B will be higher, so therefore answer is A. Question 38. What is the name of the ester shown? Now ester is made from carboxylic acid and alcohol. The first part of ester is always carboxylic acid, and from this bond we can find out which portion is carboxylic acid and which is alcohol. So the first portion is carboxylic acid and second portion is alcohol group. So there are 3 carbon atoms in the alcohol side, so we have propanol. And we have 4 carbon atom on the carboxylic acid side, so we have butanoic acid. Now when propanol and butanoic acid combine together, the name becomes propyl butanoate. This is because in writing the name of alcohol comes first and name of carboxylic acid comes later. So therefore correct option is B, propyl butanoate. Question 39. The diagram shows the structure of a monomer. We have this monomer. Which diagram shows the partial structure of its polymer? Now in this monomer we can see that there is double bond present, so it can do addition polymerization. Now the groups attached to the first carbon atom is CH3 and fluorine, and the groups attached with the second carbon atom is Cl and hydrogen. In the formation of polymer, double bond is converted into single bond as it is addition polymerization. So we can see there are single bonds in A, B, C and D. Now let's find out the groups attached with the carbon atom. Now with the first carbon atom there is CH3 in the monomer and F. While in A we can see there is no CH3, there is only F. So therefore A is incorrect. In B we have CH3 with the carbon atom and Cl with the same carbon atom. Now in monomer we can see that there is CH3 with the first carbon atom and fluorine with the same carbon. So there must be fluorine on the place of chlorine, so this is also incorrect. In polymer C we can see CH3 is on the first carbon atom and with CH3 there is hydrogen. There must be fluorine. Again for D we can see with the first carbon atom there is CH3 and fluorine, and with the second carbon atom we have Cl and hydrogen. Now this is according to the monomer, and also this is repeated CH3FClH. So therefore correct option is D. Question 40. Which statement about polymers is correct? A. Nylon and terylene are produced by addition polymerization. Now this is wrong because nylon and terylene both are produced by condensation polymerization. B. Nylon and terylene both contain the amide linkages. Now this is wrong because both does not contain the same linkage. In nylon, amide linkage is present, which is RC double bond O, NH and R, while in terylene ester linkage is present, which is RC double bond O, O, R. C. Simple sugars are produced by hydrolyzing proteins. Now when proteins are hydrolyzed, actually amino acids are formed. Simple sugars are not formed. So this is incorrect. D. Starch contains the element carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Now the general formula for starch is C6H10O5 n number of times. So D is correct. So the answer is D.
Thank you for watching. If this paper was useful, then please subscribe to this channel. You can also share this video with your friends. See you in the next one. Till then, take care.